This is the FRC Roundtable, coming to you all the way from Minnesota. Your host team 2052 Nightcrawler presents this weekly FRC gathering where FIRST Robotics competition teams take cooperation off the field. Share your knowledge, give and get advice, solve a challenge, or celebrate what makes your team special. 3, 2, 1, go!
Welcome, everyone, to the Sunday night FRC Roundtable. My name is Scott Davis. I am a mentor for Team 2052 Nightcrawler.
And I'm Aphomia, and I'm a senior on Team 2052 Nightcrawler. I'm also one of this year's co-captains, and we want to welcome you guys to tonight's Roundtable. A few housekeeping items before we start. First, the FRC Roundtable, so where we are right now, is recorded for YouTube and Spotify. So this meeting and then previous discussions are all posted on there. And we'd also ask that everyone would be 13 years or older to participate on the call, just to protect student safety. And if you're comfortable, we'd love if people would use their cameras, especially when speaking, so we can see you. And the roundtable is also not exclusive to Minnesota anymore, so students and mentors from all FRC teams can join and contribute to any discussions. And if you want more information, also including our privacy policy, it's at team2052.com/roundtable. And so we're going to do an overview of one of the pages of our wiki. If you don't know, we have a wiki that's on our team website, and there's a lot of different topics on there, but today we're just going to highlight the reveal video page. And so, as you may know, a lot of teams have a reveal video that they put out usually before their first competition, kind of to show what the best parts or what their favorite parts about their robot are. And so we have a page on our wiki where we're talking about what to include in the reveal video, also pluses, kudos, and deltas and feedback based on our previous reveal videos. There's a lot of flexibility in how you can structure your video, but we also have some advice about different things that we usually include in our videos, editing processes, also how to plan different shots, and yeah, a lot of different information about how you can approach making your own reveal video. All right. So we can hand it over to our speaker for today. I believe it's Briley. We're going to be talking about defensive strategy for rebuilds at today's meeting.
Hi, my name is Briley Olsenowski. I'm from Team 3277 ProDigi, based at Thief River Falls. Scott, am I good to just kind of take it away here?
Yeah, it's your show. Go right ahead. You've got the floor.
I'm going to screen share if that's okay. Do the entire screen. Right. So I have a little bit of a slides here to kind of just talk about defense in general. And then I have some videos to go over, and then it's just kind of open up into some general defense talk in general. So this is my presentation on defense. This part's going to be really short because the videos is where it's actually important. And then there's that famous quote that defense wins championships. So it is definitely important in this game. Stopping that big fuel output is going to be huge. So in general, why should you play defense? When I think of it, when you're playing defense, you're gaining points by taking away the other alliance's points. Every ball that they miss is a point that you're earning. If you can make them miss more balls than you could put up, you're winning from that interaction. So that is the main appeal to playing defense. A really important part of defense is knowing who you're playing defense against. You have to ask yourself some questions. Are they easy to push around? Can they only shoot from one spot? Do they take a certain path when they shoot? Are they really weak to getting hit in a certain corner? Knowing your enemy, knowing who you're playing defense on is going to be really big and give you a big advantage. There's a bunch of different types of defense in this game, especially how many bots you want to play it with, 1, 2, or 3. And then these are some types of defense that I'll cover on the next slide. And then today I'll just be going over some matches. At any point, if you want to add something to what I'm saying, or then at the end, of course, we'll open up to kind of talk in general, but just feel free to jump in, raise your hand so I can see you, or if you want to just jump in. And then I'm not perfect, so if I make a mistake, just correct me. Here's a field map, and I'm going to kind of discuss these. These are the 5 main ones I've seen so far. Just kind of go over them real quick before we get in our matches. Just in case you're kind of new to defense, you understand what I'm talking about when I say they're playing zone defense, or they're playing man defense. The first type of defense I'm going to talk about is this zone defense here. Zone is you're playing in one of the 3 zones, either the neutral zone, the your alliance station, or the opposing alliance station. Mainly, it's played over here in the opposing alliance station. Your main goal is to just limit traffic coming across the bumps, especially, and under the trenches. And then when the opposing alliance is in their scoring phase, you're doing whatever you can to slow them down, kind of running back and forth here along this wall, hitting them, throwing off their shots. But you're mainly staying here, and it kind of helps because you're always on the right side. If you come out here and playing man and they sneak by you, you're now late to get back in here, and you're missing those shots they're getting up in the air. So the man idea on zone is staying over here, staying in this in the opposing alliance zone. Then we'll go into man. Man defense is following a robot. If you have a blue bot over here and they're moving their way over here, your main goal is to stay on them, hug them like glue, and just slow them down for as long as you can. Wherever they're going, your job is just to pester them, throw off their shot, slow them down and picking up fuel. This is really good for playing against alliances that have one really good robot and other two mediocre bots, or they have one really big dumper. It's kind of when you want to see a lot of man. Another strategy I've seen this year is the offense defense. It's not super popular. I don't know if we'll see more of it or not, but I have seen it a few times, so I want to talk about it. Offense defense is when you're running offense on your alliance shift and defense on the opposing alliance shift. So, of course, in your alliance shift, you're scoring in your area, wherever you are over here. And then your last 5 seconds, you're running over and slowing down. And then the main part of this defensive strategy is you're slowing them down, and you have to make sure to give yourself some time on the way back to take a scoop of these balls before you're coming back into your scoring. This works really good when you have alliance partners that can be shuttling for you. So you have the fuel built up in these corners to score during your on shift, but during your off shift, you can help slow down the opposing alliance's score. I put hybrid as kind of a mix for playing defense and shuttling. So during the opposing alliance shift, you're over here playing some defense, hitting bots. And then during their off shift, you're usually in the neutral zone, getting balls back to your teammates. There's hybrid goes a lot of ways. Again, there's a lot of ways you can play defense, but that's just kind of what I lump those into. The last type of defense I'll talk about right here real quick is counter defense. Counter defense is staying in your alliance zone and preventing opposing alliance defense on your robot. So blocking these trenches and the bumps from other robots and protecting your high scoring robot. I've seen a little bit of it, and I have a video of it that covers it, and they play a really good job at it. So I'll call it out when I get to it. This wraps up the presentation side, and now we're going to go into just watching. I have a few videos that we'll go over, just some different defensive I've seen, some things I want to point out. I think we'll go over probably 4 videos today. We're going to just get right into it. This first one is what I'm most comfortable talking about because it's a match we played. This is GNR, Great Northern Regional Finals 2. It's, hold on, let me open this up. So we have our alliance team 3277 with Chaotic and our alliance captain 1710. And we're up against the Semiconductors, Toolcats, and this is Red River Rage. This is their defense bot, and they have 2 really high scoring bots with Toolcats and Semiconductors. When we talk about knowing your opponents, one thing that I knew was Semiconductors were a turret bot. They were really hard to play defense on. My main goal was to not be watching them, but I knew that Toolcats were really weak to defense. So if we watch this match, we come out with winning auto, which was pretty awesome. Knowing that we won auto, I immediately knew that I had to get right over there to stop those first 10 seconds of scoring, as well as also get right on that because I have the first active shift. Been a little while getting stuck on balls, not my proudest moment. Then immediately get right over here on this side, start hitting Toolcats, trying to throw off some shots, and bouncing between the robots. Playing some mainly zone defense was my strategy, just trying to stay on these robots, throw off that scoring potential of Toolcats, and then mix of zone and man, as you'll see a little bit here. I'll come back and play some defense on semi-factors right here. Just kind of slowing them down from getting back and limiting that amount of time they can be pretty flexible. Right about here, see a really interesting thing happen. In this corner, we're playing defense on two cats. That collision right there shuts off the breaker, and then our breaker flips right here. So defense this game is really, really hard. It's really hard on robots. I've seen a lot of matches like this where bots are just getting shut down. It was a really interesting match, but that's kind of the gist of this of zone defense, staying over here, trying to throw the shots off. The match before this finals one, they put up around 300 points, but playing some zone defense, we limited them to 100 less points. So defense is huge. Play it when you can. The next match I'm going to pull up here is the best example of defense I could find. We'll be watching defense played on 254 Cheesy Poofs. We'll skip through auto. They won auto by a landslide. It is a Cheesy Poof after all. And I forget what spot is playing defense this match, but we'll see him come over in just a little bit. It's this 100 bot right here. They spend a little bit of time pushing him. They're mainly just going to play zone defense. Cheesy Poofs is not a bump-only bot, so playing zone is a little bit harder because they can come over the trench or they can come over the bump. But they're going to do a really good job at just limiting their shots in the air, throwing them off when they hit. Here they come over, they slow them down, they come to the trench. We can see they're pushing around on this bump, trying to stop them from getting to their scoring position. And when they get to their scoring position, we can see they hit them a little late, but I mean they're really making the Cheesy Poofs work for their shots. See, they missed probably 8 to 10 fuel there on that shot. They just really push them around, and we'll kind of watch this whole match just to show. Some critiques I have this is right here. They follow them over the bump. I don't think it was on purpose. They just kind of overcommitted to it, and then we'll see a little bit of counter defense actually right here. They go over the bump again, and then this 70-66 team comes over here. You can see they're stopping them from getting over the bump here, and they actually just spend the rest of the match kind of here, just pushing them around and not letting them get to their alliance partners, which is really good counter defense. I mean, good defense by the blue lines and good counter defense by the red lines. Really risky play there. I don't know if they drew the tower penalty, but it's definitely a risky play to stay and play defense when there's that ladder there. They do a really good job at staying between the ladder and the Cheesy Poofs to try to keep away from that penalty. I think this was one of the few matches that the Cheesy Poofs lost, and I think it was largely because of that defense that was being played that kind of helped contribute to this. Those were the two really big videos I have. I'm going to open up to discussion right now. I have a few others that can show some different things, but I'll kind of open it back up to just discussion on what we watched, about defense in general, and then I have a few questions if the conversation kind of lulls. I stopped it. There we go. So I guess my first question I'm just going to throw out there to kind of get some conversation going is for teams that have played defense, what has worked well for you? And teams that haven't played defense, is there a reason why you haven't played defense?
I think for us, a lot of the times where we haven't played defense, it's come down to the discussions that we have with our alliance members beforehand. And I was going to ask about that because I think we talk a lot about like figuring out the weaknesses of the opposing alliance's robots, but also like thinking about what are the most important things you need to discuss with your alliance members and creating a match strategy in terms of like who would be playing defense, as like what does that come down to? Like, for example, what do you usually you think ask your alliance partners when you guys are forming a match strategy in terms of defense? I think that's an interesting point to talk about.
I think kind of the knowing your opponent part comes into that conversation for sure. Knowing who you're playing defense on, and if you're playing alliance that their top 2 picks are turret bots, is it more important to have your first or second pick be scoring just because it's really hard to play defense on turret bots, or if they're 2 big dumpers, send someone over to kind of throw them around because they're going to be more susceptible to defense. I think for this competition, that second pick is usually going to be defense. It's really hard to find the depth for another high-scoring alliance, but looking for who's going to be better on defense and hopefully give you some more points in auto, because winning the auto is also important this year. And I'm curious to see what other people think about that too. What is your general match strategy when discussing defense?
Bradley, I can't really speak to match strategy because that's not a place where I'm usually involved as a mentor. But I would like to get kind of some advice from you about how you analyze your alliance opponents to figure out which bots you think will be the best option for playing defense against. So if you're trying to figure out where to focus, I'm curious to know how you go about identifying the better defensible bots. Maybe you have 2 bots that are equally high scoring and you've chosen one over the other as being, we're going to have better luck if we try to defend this one more. Can you share like how you kind of come to those decisions, what you look for, how you scout?
Yeah. So our team is really small. We're bringing 4 kids to Tulsa. So our scouting team is just, I think 2 kids and a mentor. So as far as like number wise go, we don't really have much there. I think most of it comes from driver experience and that are watching match recaps. Because there's not a lot of defense played in quals, it can be really hard to get that data. But like when I was talking about the match we played at GNR, we played defense against tools during the practice day, and I immediately recognized that I know they had swerve, they had the same swerve as us, but they were really easy to push around. I went over and I could push them like they were sliding on glass. It was really interesting. But kind of just from playing against them in quals and practice day, as well as if there's 2 bots that are equally high scoring, you've never played defense against them, you go into the match saying, we're going to play defense against both of them. And whatever one is most affected by that, focus on it the most. Targeting things like the corners of a robot, since the defense strategy of this game is all about collisions because it throws bots off the most. Corners are where you get the most twists, the most change of direction in a robot. So if I hit a robot in the corner and it twists more than the other and throws off that shot more, I'll focus that robot more. At Blackjacks at GNR, they were a robot that wasn't easily moved at all. And that was one that we went into that match. I told Chaotic, they were our defense bot that match. I was like, don't even worry about them. They're the second highest scoring robot and they're almost impossible to move. And just kind of when you play during quals or going back and watching them and saying, oh, they shoot from here and they really don't get pushed around if they've had defense played on them. Otherwise, for scouting wise, I think it'd be hard to get those numbers unless you've seen defense played against them. It just kind of has to happen from experience. Daryl, you got something to add or something to say?
Yeah, so I'm from Team 5464. I'm the drive coach and the captain. We were there at GNR, and we ended up playing the defense a lot because our throughput was just not where it should have been. And so we mainly played defense our second day, and we were going against Toolcats, and we knew to focus on them. And so, we knew to go to the corners. They were a big bot. I think we were 115.1 when we got there. So we were shaving off weight. So we were probably 125, 130 pounds playing defense out there. And we were a pretty tall bot too. And we ended up stopping, I think we stopped 15 balls from going in, stopped the full cycle, and then ended up disabling them at the end, just because we were pressing on them so hard. And then the next match, we went against Blackjacks, and we actually didn't let them score at all, because we were playing zone defense on their alliance side, not letting them go through the trench, over the bump. They just couldn't do anything. So I think, having a big bot going towards the corners of their bot, especially, if you're going against a team with a turret, see how far that turret can actually turn, see how fast it turns. The big dumper bots with fixed shooters, I think, were easily defended because you could just hit them once and, you could stop 10, 15 balls from going in because they couldn't adjust quick enough. So we were, I think, a pretty good defense bot at GNR, just because also we had scouters who gave us the data, like, how much did the robot weigh? How big is the robot? Do they shoot from one spot? I think there was only a couple teams that could shoot and move pretty well. Toolcats not being one of them. So we knew that, and we knew the exact spot that they shot from, and we kept them from that. So I think that's a big thing.
I'm really glad that you brought up that weight. Weight is definitely a big part of it. If your goal is to play defense, I know it's not everybody's goal, but if you can figure out how to get up to that max weight, it helps to prevent you from getting pushed around, and it helps you push other people around. I think that's the main reason why Toolcat was so easy to push around. I think they were just over 100 pounds. I think they were a really light robot.
Yeah, I was just going to throw out there. So we just competed at the Iowa Regional this weekend, and honestly, we didn't really find much correlation. Trying to figure out who to defend, whether they were a big dumper or a turret, it really was more about their individual bot than that architecture. We found there were some big dumpers that could handle it. They'd wedge themselves in the trench and couldn't be stopped. And there were some turrets who could, it seemed like it took them a while to lock back on, or if you could bump them and twist them. It really seemed to me more about, I don't know, other attributes anyway. I know at the beginning of the season, there was a lot of theories that turrets can't be defended and dumpers would be. And honestly, we didn't really see that play out that much. The turret bots seemed really good at wedging themselves kind of in the back corners or in corners and just locking in no matter where they were. And just drawing those pin counts, it might stop you from shooting for 3 seconds, but like the big dumpers seem to be able to draw the pin for 3 seconds. And then once it was time to clear the pin, their hopper's empty. So honestly, at least our team didn't really find much correlation. It was really case by case, unfortunately. Wish it was easier.
I think that really ties back into what I was saying, that to really figure out what bots are susceptible to defense all happens from how well did they handle actual defense played on them. And it's really hard to make that call before you've seen an actual case of it. And especially trying to watch quals matches, there's a bot that can go play defense on them that they don't really play defense on them, just because they're not a very experienced driver or new to playing defense. So that's definitely a big case of it. I do agree with what you're saying about turret robots. Usually do prefer the outposts and the depot corners. They like to hide in those corners. And the dumper bots, kind of a meta I've seen come around those is hiding on the sides of the ladders, as well as where the trench meets the bump, and using that as an anchor point. So while playing defense, if you can hit them from when they're on the side of the ladder, hit them from the hub going backwards and push them towards the wall, push them away, throw off that shot. Or if they're against the bumps, kind of hit them from the hub side. So kind of staying hub side defense and staying on the inside and just hitting them around is a good way to help get around that. But that is an anchor point I've been seeing used for those high scoring robots.
I'd like I see my team member Luke, who's our driver for 2530, and regrets most of the time when he's meant to be an offensive bot because he loves defense more than anything. And I really want him to throw his comments in here if he's willing. But I want to add 2 observations in that, we were just at 10K this last week. Mustang was the high power shooter along with No Mythic. Mustang clearly learned. They clearly figured out that they were going to be defended, and they learned some strategies to get around it as to positioning for their shot in between the tower and the alliance wall. They'd wedge themselves in there. That's pretty much a place where you can't get hit and taken out of position. Although if you're 25-30, you can get wedged in there and immobilized for the rest of the match, which is how we got out for our match. So watch our last play and you'll just cry. Or we will cry. But, also I think film study is really important for defense because we had studied Mustang and we knew their tendencies, right? Everybody gets their paths of preference and everybody has a favorite way of moving. And if you can study those, you can sometimes see the vulnerabilities. So Luke, I'll throw it to you if you want to throw some things out of lessons learned or advice or whatever.
Yeah, I can add a few of the things I noticed when we were going to defend bots. Really, there were kind of 2 routes we found that were effective that we could go down. For hitting a robot in their zone, really what we just looked for would be a more lightweight bot. In that instance, we found that like hitting them would be a lot more effective because you'd really just throw them way off. And just a couple degrees with a heavier bot, that's usually not super effective. So, but with lightweight bots, turret, big dumper, anything like that, just a good thwack would set them way off. For some of those heavier robots that you couldn't really defend just by hitting into them, that's where we would just play the individual defense just by denying them entry, especially if they can only go over the bump. Just blocking those was really effective against them. So overall, I would say if you can find a single high-scoring robot and just prevent them from entering or exiting, that would be the way to go. Of course, it's not always possible to just completely deny them the ins and outs. Then again, the other thing we saw is just stealing was pretty effective. Even if it's just during your inactive period, just taking that load of balls away, it pretty much does double duty. Well, nearly double duty. It's an argument you could have. So, yeah, those are our main observations.
One type of defense that I have theorized and I've yet to see it actually applied is this year, because it's so easy to get stuck on balls. There are a lot of teams that get stuck on the balls or stuck on the bump. Has anyone seen a defense bot that was committed to playing defense go defend a stuck 1 or 2 robot, like one of their top 2 scorers, and just prevent their alliance partners from getting them off the balls or off the bump, or prevent them from getting themselves off the balls or off the bump? I'm seeing some no's. Personally, I think that's a really strong defensive strategy, just because if they're stuck on balls, they're not scoring. And if you're guarding them when they're stuck on balls, you're effectively playing perfect defense. They are not scoring points. You're stopping them from scoring any points. Then if they want to send another robot over to help get them unstuck, you're now playing defense on 2 robots, one of them which is being played perfectly on defense. So that's something that I will be telling our defense bot moving forward is if you see a robot stuck, do not let that robot get unstuck. Something I'm going to push, especially we didn't see a chance at GNR. It kind of happened when Toolcats got shut down, but we also got shut down with them. So that was just something I had seen. It's maybe not GP, around that, but it is a strategy I have seen.
I shook my head earlier, but now that I'm thinking about it, I actually do remember seeing this at one match, but it was a more just like opportune thing. Because I know that an alliance, I think it was one of our alliance members. I'm not sure if it was the intention, but I do remember seeing a robot on the opposite alliance that had gotten beached. And then a partner that was trying to cross under the trench, I believe, was trying to dislodge them. But I know one of our alliance partners had gone over and was blocking them theoretically from picking up fuel, but it's also interesting to think about how I could have also stopped them from getting them off for quite a while. But yeah, I don't know if we'll see that as an intentional strategy, but that's interesting to think about.
I have a question about weight. So, Briley, you mentioned earlier how important it is to have weight. And I'm curious about the trade-off between playing defense with a full hopper of balls to give you an extra 20 or 30 pounds of weight when you're playing defense versus the extremely high number of robots this year that popped their main breaker because they were pulling too many amps. And so if you're trying to push a robot and you're also 30 pounds heavier than you normally are, and potentially they're 30 pounds heavier than they normally are, I'm wondering if you saw any correlation between we don't like having a hopper full of balls because we see a lot of robots blowing their breaker, or you just aren't agile enough. You can't move as quick when you weigh that much. Or have you found that it's generally better to make sure that when you're playing defense, you're also full of fuel?
I think I see advantages to both sides of it. I know personally when we played defense, we played kind of the zone and the hit and run. So the extra weight would have helped us, but the way our intake and hopper was designed, if we had balls in our hopper, it would leave it hanging out. And those foul points are pretty big if you get that contact inside frame perimeter. So we chose to not play with balls. If you play without balls, your main goal is to prevent, like if you're playing against a team that's bump only, you want that agility so you can prevent them from coming over. If you're playing more of a hit and run strategy, that extra weight definitely helped. I know we felt it because I think we were only 105. We were on the lighter side. So we were less effective when we were hitting robots just because we didn't quite push them as much. So that weight would definitely be helpful. It really, again, because there's so much variation in strategy, it just depends on what you're playing and what the opposing alliance is weaker to as much as you know about them.
Yeah, I guess I'll share that. We're max weight. We can hold like 60 to 65 fuel. And we really found that the defenders, when we came over the hard part was getting over the bump. We were absolutely terrorized by that all weekend. But once we got over, we could kind of go where we wanted. The defend, because you just have 30 pounds on them and the robots are all traction limited and you can kind of move them. And we found a lot of times we could basically get to where we needed to be to draw those pins. Like the actual like pushing of us, just 30 pounds is a lot, right? And yeah, really found that just pushing the big dumper style and when they're totally full is really, really hard. Never did see a defense bot try to fill up and add weight to themselves. I'm not sure how that would have gone.
Sam, what kind of swerve drive do you guys have?
We're the West Coast products and we are geared all the way down. So we are big torque.
Okay.
And a lot of that's for battery savings too. We never were using the top speed and we were worried about being very, very heavy.
We're running the new STS, the MK5Is. They have a wider tread than a lot of other ones, so that definitely helps the traction thing. But we're running at the threes just because we do a lot of more the offense, defense, and the full field running. So that speed is more helpful. But I could definitely see your point where if you're max weight, you're full of balls, you're running the low gear ratio, that you're going to be really hard to move both when playing defense and having defense played against you. This is something I'm curious to hear because I know we have some pretty good coding teams on here. For teams that use like a Limelight or Vision software when aiming, do you feel like that helps when having defense played against you? It like helps kind of keep you on target, or if it hurts you, or if it just kind of it bounces out?
Do you mean like updating your pose, like being able to bounce back from someone hitting you off course?
So we use a Limelight, or we're going to use a Limelight, but it's very rudimentary. We just look at the April tag and line ourselves up with the center of it, which means as a driver, I don't have to turn my wrist to kind of help align with it. I can just let the robot kind of bounce back to center. It makes it easier for me, easier to keep defense away. So just kind of for the aiming side of it and the driver side of it.
Yeah, I know it's very helpful for us, especially now having two Limelights, one on the chassis and one on the turret. But I know that our drivers have communicated it being especially helpful in terms of when someone is trying to like ram you off course or aiming, being able to constantly have either a button or some sort of setting that keeps you aimed towards the hub if you're scoring during that period is pretty helpful because then you're less worried about trying to readjust or go to a specific position. And you can, again, like I was saying earlier, like kind of bounce back really quickly, which is really important, especially in this game where you have such like specific time periods, and time is really of the essence when you get the chance to score.
I know the thing that we added is if we start shooting and we detect that we're bumped off course, we stop. And that really helps when you're getting kind of that, they're trying to ram your corners and twist you. We still spray 4 or 5 off, but it keeps us from spraying the full hopper. Basically, as soon as the bot realizes I'm off course, it holds, and that way you keep your kind of preserve what you have in your hopper. And that was a big upgrade that really helped handle defense too.
That's actually really interesting. I know for us, it's mostly just manual. Like our primary driver will just like let go of the aiming and the scoring, but having that be automatic is really smart because like if they hit you, I don't know, 4 times in the same period and you're losing 3 to 4 balls, just like spraying out to nowhere, that ends up being a lot. So that's pretty cool.
Briley, one of the things that you haven't mentioned yet, and I don't know if you had planned to hold this in reserve for one of your Q&A questions here, but at Northern Lights in our finals 2 match, we had lost finals 1, and so our drive team and alliance, Fomi, you actually might have more inside scoop on this than I do, being on the drive team, but we ended up playing 3 defense in the opponent's alliance zone for part of that match to shut down their scoring. Do you have any thoughts on that, or have you seen anything like that? Now, Fomi, if you know more about how that discussion went, anything you want to share on that as well?
You can go first, Fomi, if you want to talk about it, and I'll kind of share my experience on it.
No, you're good. I was just going to add, I was there for more of the beginning of the discussion because I think especially during or prior to that match, there had been a lot of back and forth in terms of trying to determine a strategy, especially based on what happened the first match. I think we started off talking about 2 robot defense, but I think we ended up going to 3, just watching the past match over again and noticing that, first of all, talking about how susceptible those robots were in past defense. But again, I think it was kind of more of a last minute strategy, just seeing how wide the gap was between like our scoring and how much of an impact it would actually make to send 2 robots over, or if even having 1 robot scoring would be worth the difference of instead stopping the other lines from scoring that many points. So I think a lot of it was also kind of just a shot in the dark, but also like you said, like knowing your prior, knowing your opponents, but also looking at how they worked together in the last match. But yeah, I'll let you keep talking about that.
So I did see that match. I saw that triple defense, and I really wanted to try it. But we were picked by 1710 Ravonic Revolution. They were a really wide, narrow, and very tall robot, and they were bump only. And I think that's a very big hindrance when playing triple defense because you need to be able to have everybody get over there and everybody get out of there really easy, and maneuverability is really big. So when I saw we get picked by them, I'm like, it's just not going to happen. But when I was watching matches, it was finals 1 or 3 at GNR. It actually happened accidentally. I didn't even realize it happened. They had broke down. Ravonics had broke down. They were playing defense. Chaotic was doing their job, and they were playing defense. And we at one point had ran to the neutral zone to grab some balls. And I saw a good shot I could take on semiconductors. So I came over there and was pushing them around and kind of hitting them. And I didn't realize that all 3 robots were actually playing defense at that time. And I would say that it is really effective if the bots are susceptible to defense and just in general, because 5 or 6 robots on one side of the field is just very hard to move or do anything. But the penalties is where you have to watch out for, because getting away from a pin count, I forget which one it is, but colluding with partners to shut down game elements is one that you can have to watch out for. Or if you're playing near the end game, trying to get away from that ladder. I have a video of 2 robots, dual defense against 2 good high-scoring robots, and they just kind of get shoved up against the ladder at end game, and they get like 45 points from that. So I definitely wanted to do it. It actually happened to us, and I could see it being very useful. I would love to see it happen, and I think it will happen at champs, where there'll be shifts like Northern Lights, where everybody goes to one side, everybody goes to the other side. and the only balls gained are the ones grabbed on the way over, kind of.
Yeah, if you watched the finals from Iowa yesterday, it happened. There was six. We put all three of our bots, I think, on their side twice, and two of them in the other one. So go watch that. And honestly, most of it was just trying to steal from them. Like, we found that if we spent the whole inactive period in the middle, we just ran out of fuel. We were starved, and so basically the minute we were inactive, we would just beeline to their side and take as much as we could. And it was less about slowing down their scoring and more about taking what we could off the floor. Some of those turret bots that they shoot at like 5 or 6 a second, they really need like a full floor to put up the high numbers. And if you can take 30 or 40 off the floor and get out of there, maybe slow down their scoring, it was really big swings. Like, we had some of our best moments doing that. We also had some penalties we drew doing that. It's also super scary because there's a couple driver stations where it's really, really hard to see. And like, at one point we lost our robot. We didn't know where we were, and we were stuck behind the hub, and we have to go over a bump. And it was very, very challenging to figure out where you are. It reminded me of the 2017 sightlines a lot, except you can get beached too. So very scary. So use with caution, but it can be really effective too.
I'm glad you brought up sight, because my next question is, when picking your alliance stations, I know that, so alliance station 2, the middle one, is the worst for vision because you have both hubs. Alliance, I think it's 1 has the best for defense because you get the best straight line vision, and alliance 3 is kind of in the middle. When choosing those as a captain, did you give your defense bot the better vision, or did you put them kind of in the midfield area, or did you put them in the worst vision because they're your least scoring robot? Kind of where did you put them, and what was your idea on it? I know for us in our alliance, we put our defense bot in the best vision because slowing down the other alliance was a really important goal for us. So giving them the best vision and the best possibility for them to do so was a really high priority for us.
I know I can't really speak for playing, placing teams in, driver stations, but I think it's interesting to just think about the context of how much experience your drivers have in terms of which robots are scoring, because it's also a kind of a trade-off between, like, where are the defensive robots going? Are they trying to block other robots from going across the bump or the trench? Are they picking one side? Do you know the lineup of the other alliance? And so is there a way for the defensive bot to stick to a certain region of the field? And then you're not even really thinking about overall visibility. You'd think about visibility for that one zone almost. So I wonder if that's also like a big part of deciding that placement, just like knowing, again, like you said, who you're against, but also is it worth the trade-off of giving them lower vision of one specific region?
I know it balanced really well for us because we put Ravonics in 3, and that's kind of the lane they wanted to run. And it gave them good vision because they were a bump only. So that seeing that bump in that right side gave them lots of area to see fuel. And we put them there over a defense spot. Toolcats like to shoot from that side, but putting them in 1, they could also see that side. So kind of touching on both, for us, it just kind of worked out, but I could see that being a harder decision. But I think that your scoring alliance has to give way because in this game, I mean, defense is big, but if you don't have your number 1 overall scoring robot, it's really hard to win the match. Almost impossible, I would say, unless you have a lot of depth in your tournament.
That's a good point, but it also kind of goes back to something I know we've been talking about in the past few weeks, and that's how is it worth it having a robot go and specifically defend robots from intaking? Because there's a lot of fuel on the field, so it's really hard, especially during a match. You can't exactly predict where all the fuel is going to be. Like, how do you know where you're going to intake? But I know there's been a lot of discussion about just blocking either giant chunks of fuel or even outside of just keeping robots from crossing the bump or the trench, also like counter feeding or like going through their alliance zone where they're trying to collect fuel, and then you send it all back to the neutral zone. They get back there to score. And like I think Sam brought up earlier, if you have a turret bot even if they're hard to move around and they can score like 5 or 6 a second, they need that 5 or 6 to actually score. And so you're wasting their time and making them come back into the neutral zone. So like, I'm wondering what you guys think about defense strategies where you're just focusing on preventing robots from like intaking fuel, or, you know, counter feeding, or just keeping them away from large places of fuel.
To me, I see that more as what you should be doing during your on active shift as a zone defense robot. So while you're over in the opposing alliance zone, stealing those balls away and preventing them because they're going to be shuttling back to their station, that's what you should be focusing on in your off shift. I know it can be hard as a defense robot because maybe you're not picked to having the best intake or the best shooting mechanism, but I think that's a big part of it. I don't know if we'll see as much as, like, you know, if there's a big chunk of fuel in the neutral zone going out of the opposing alliance zone to go kind of prevent teams from getting to that, because it's just going to be really hard to do. And staying on that alliance side of the bump is so valuable because a lot of teams struggle going over that bump or struggle going through the trench, and just slowing them down there, I think, is more valuable. That's why I think zone is more important over man, because it gets you in a better position for most of the match. And then, like you were talking about, you can use that time to get rid of their fuel, kind of gobble it up and spit it back out at them. It's just funny.
Briley or anyone else here, I'm interested to talk about next events. So whether that's champs for folks, I'm sorry, not next events, because I know that we still have North Star coming up, but thinking ahead to anybody who qualified for champs or anyone who's qualified for the Minnesota State tournament, there's this, I would say, inclination of just score as many points as you can because you want your OPR to be high or your EPA to be high, and you want you're thinking ahead to, we want to have good stats so that we look better. But once you've made it to champs, or once you're in the state tournament, that becomes less important. And I wonder if it becomes maybe if the effort should be put towards saying, hey, we're just not going to make the 360. We know we're not going to get that double ranking point. So when in our off cycle, maybe we should go play defense. So people can see that we can not only score, but we can also play defense. For teams that actually have the ability to be a high scoring bot in a match, maybe they shouldn't just score the entire time, so that they can show that they can be an alliance partner, or even try out some of these strategies of playing 2 or 3 defense, or taking away, trying to do starvation and taking away balls in the opponent's end zone, even if they don't need to go there to get the fuel. I'm beginning to wonder if teams are thinking ahead in that regard, saying, look, we've already established our OPR or EPA or all the different stats that box establishes by the time we've gotten a champs, or by the time the state tournament has come around. Now it's time for us to think ahead towards alliance selection and show what we can do both on offense and defense. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Well, I can give my take on it. We're usually kind of a mid-tier robot. You know, we're usually not in the top 8. We're kind of just outside of it. So we often get matchups where it's like, yeah, we're probably not going to win this one. Let's kind of show what we can do. So that's why we did kind of run that offense defense, going and playing defense, kind of feeling out some different bots, kind of scouting effectively, kind of feeling out, oh, this is a really high scoring robot. How can we limit their point potential? If you already know you're probably not going to win, kind of changing up your strategy, knowing that you can't outscore them. That's where defensing, if you figure out that they're really susceptible, you can maybe throw that match and get another quals match win and get some more RP out of it, which is really big. I know that as far as our team's position is right now, we're going to Tulsa on Tuesday. We've done a lot of changes in looking at Statbotics, where it has us. We are projected to be in the top 8. And I think kind of touching on what we were saying, if we do get at Tulsa, we'll have a good shot at going to Worlds. Just because we're a high-scoring robot, I don't think we're going to be scoring the whole competition. I'd like to stay away from defense so we can stay running, but I don't think that offense will be our only goal, for sure. Cobra Commanders are there. If we have a match against them, I'm not going to outscore them. So I'm going to go play some defense on him is at least my take on it.
This is probably, I don't want to change, it's a little tangential, Scott, but the other thing we noticed at Iowa a lot is like, because no one's getting the climb ranking point, like that 360 ranking point is a big decider, but you also end up with like a lot of ties. And so average match score is actually going to be very, I think at champs especially, is going to be very important for all the tiebreakers. And like, it did shake out a little differently at Iowa, but at one point with like 4 qual matches to go, it was like a 4-way tie for rank 1. And the average match was the tiebreaker between the top 4. And it was like, and we had some discussions about if we're up 100, do we even keep scoring? Do we try to slow down a little bit, protect our robot, don't break the intake over trying to put up 20 more fuel in a qual match? But we're kind of glad we didn't slow down. And I don't know, it's just gonna be something we debate about. And the other thing is, I think it's great to demo that you can like demonstrate, especially for alliance selection, that you can go into the other alliance zone. But oh boy, is it scary over there. I mean, it's just hard to tell like how hard you're hitting a wall even, or are you putting your intake inside another robot, or are you gonna, at least for us, getting beached on the bump is so scary. And now we have to do 2 bumps, so trade-offs all around, I guess.
I hadn't even considered the tiebreaker. That's a really good point. Yeah, because of the climb being sort of a non-factor for everyone. Although maybe we should start there. Do we think we're going to see climbs at champs? Do we think it's going to ride out the same way it's been for the first 3 weeks, 4 weeks? Anybody have any thoughts on whether that's dynamic is going to change at all?
Personally, I think it's gonna stay the same. I think especially with the ball capacity and just the scoring capabilities of the teams that we're gonna see at champs, it's not gonna be worth the points, especially for how many fuel robots could score in the same amount of time it would take to climb on really any level, except maybe L1. Yeah, I don't know like what the consideration would be for that kind of trade-off, especially if you are like a high capacity or really quickly scoring bot.
I completely agree. I think we will see more L1 climbs just because there's a higher density of like really high quality teams, but your late first round picks or your second round picks aren't going to be abundantly full of climbs now because they're at champs. It's just going to be, if I'm a team that qualified in week 4 and I know we're qualified, we're going to champs, my main focus would be how can I output more balls rather than let's try to figure out how we can fit a climb around in here, limit our ball capacity. You have to figure out how to climb fast, how to get those points out of it, how to do an auto if you want to get the RP. So I think the ball capacity is going to be much more valued and appreciated, especially because it helps you win auto too. The climb doesn't.
I kind of feel like if you're trying to be a captain at Worlds, maybe it's worth being able to do an L1, just because if you get with one of those elite bots that have one, you can get the RP as well. You have those moments where I saw, like, let's say I know team 67 has an L3. You think you get that random qual match where you're with them together, you can get it. If no one on your lines has it, you basically you're boxed out of it, right? Or you're hopeful. But I feel like even at champs, if you have an L1, it's maybe worth 1 RP. So if you're not really trying to be maybe even a top 5, and like that 1 RP can be the difference between rank 12 and rank 7 at champs, but also, that's also a tall order trying to rank top 8 at champs. I don't know. Our team's having an internal debate if it's worth it all. And yeah, I think that's pretty much the only scenario though where it's really worth it.
I like the way you frame that, where you're going for the climb in hopes to be with a good team, but under that same circumstance, you'd want to have a higher ball output so you can go for the supercharge RP instead, being with that really good team. So I think that's where being that balls helps you win games more and get that opportunistic supercharge RP, which I think we will see more of at champs. It's more important than the climb because it's one faceted. It's got one good use out of it pretty much.
Well, that'll be the other big variable is at champs, do they crank the supercharge RP up? Like at this point, like I'll give my example, team 67, they can probably solo it, right? So like they can probably give up a little fuel. If you help them out a little bit, they're not worried about 360. But if it gets bumped up to 520 or something, 400, now it's kind of a different game as well. So we'll have to see how that plays out too.
I will say I was surprised. I saw more climbs at 10K than I expected to see. In fact, I saw I don't even remember who it was, but I saw a climb that took 2 seconds. By the time they had gotten to the rung and off the ground, it was 2 seconds. It was very impressive. I just don't know if Minnesota is a good sample of the world in terms of climbs. I will be the first to admit I'm not watching a lot of regionals in other areas. And I'm not going back and rewatching their matches either. So I'm relying on all of you and the people I talk with to tell me, how things are changing, because that's not something I'm paying close attention to. But I will say that I saw a lot more level two climbs at 10K than I expected to see. I saw a lot of bots either attempt or actually complete a level 1 climb. I don't remember seeing a lot of successful auto climbs. Well, that's not true. I saw a lot of our L2 robots get off the ground in auto. Almost all the L2 climbs were kind of the flip over, grab onto the bottom rung, flip over, and get your bumpers high enough in the air to get above the bottom rung. And so I did see quite a few of those actually even in auto. So I don't know if that's an evolution. It was week 4. And so I don't know if by week 6, if by champs, we're going to see that go from, I would say maybe 10% of the robots could do a climb up to 40% of the robots could do a climb. I think that if you're at champs and you have 40% of the robots that can do an L1 climb in auto, now suddenly you're looking at a lot more ranking points. But I don't know if that's going to change. I don't know if we've hit our maximum climb ratio of 10 to 15% of the robots can climb, or if we're going to see that double and triple by the time we get to champs.
As far as what I've seen from watching a bunch of finals matches to kind of look for defense, from the ones I've seen, it's like one here, one there. Like the Hawaiian kids have a climb that's an L1 in auto, and they do it at endgame 2 just because it's really quick. Nevis had one where it was pretty quick at Great Smoky Mountains, but it's like I've watched quite a few matches of finals from different places, and the climbs are not there. Like I said, it's 1 or 2 robots maybe, or even just watching videos online, like the Robonauts climb. You see them highlighted, but when you're watching matches, they just aren't there that often. So I don't know if we'll see them show up a lot more at champs. I don't think they're just going to come out of the woodworks. But it is interesting to hear what you're talking about, Scott, because I'm not watching a lot of quals, but that is interesting to hear that there is more climbs, and I'm curious to see if we'll see more of them at Oklahoma, our next event.
As long as we're talking about Minnesota and compared to other regionals, I've heard multiple people say this over and over again, that Minnesota plays more defense than anywhere else. And I'm curious to know if you agree with that, if anyone else is seeing the same thing. Again, I am not watching the regionals in other areas as closely as everyone else is watching them. But I'm curious to know if this is kind of the black and blue division of the NFL where we play tough defense and that's kind of the Midwest thing, or if this is a situation where we have a lot of teams that didn't get their mechanism finished and so they're forced to play defense, or maybe the defense that we're playing is causing more mechanisms to get broken, which is causing more defense to get played because now they have broken mechanisms. I'm curious. I heard someone make the comment of that nobody wants to play defense against the high performing California teams because they don't want to be responsible for knocking out somebody's their hero's robot or whatever the case may be, and they want to be purely offense and everybody wants to show their offensive capabilities. Again, I don't have a horse in the race here on one theory or the other, but I'm curious to know what you guys think about, do we see a lot more defense here where we are compared to other regionals, and if you have any theories as to what that might be, if you do agree with that.
Briley, I'd be curious to hear what you think about this because you've clearly been watching a lot. But, we were 2530 was at Bluff Country and then 10K. Bluff Country had a strong mix of non-Minnesota teams, and we had very little defense compared with what we saw at 10K. So Iowa was going on obviously the same time at 10K, bigger mix of teams. So that might be an interesting comparison if you've watched both.
I have not watched Iowa. I did watch some 10K finals, while watching some teams that, fellow Minnesota teams. And I knew there's some Iowa as well too. From what I've seen, a lot of the defense bots in the Minnesota regionals are bots that also look like they could play offense, but have been told to play defense. And usually it's a strong defense presence. A lot of defense bots I've seen in other finals are like just the squares, where it's a swerve kit that goes and plays defense. That's what I've seen a lot of, is just like square robots that go and hit other robots. Lots of robots crossing the bump and landing on robots because they have no hopper or anything to protect it. And I think a lot of that comes from, when the Minnesota being hard defense, a lot of it comes from, these are robots that could score, but when they play defense, they usually, because they want to play defense, so they're going to play some hard defense. I do get your point. From what I've seen, I do think Minnesota is a much stronger defense presence. This will be we went to Iowa a few years ago, and I would say that there was not much for defense. And then, of course, we have this Oklahoma one coming up, and I'm curious to see what it's going to be like. But from what I've seen, the Minnesota regionals are if you want to see what good defense looks like, those are the ones I could pull the most videos from. Of they played good defense, they played good defense, they shut this team down, or they, both robots got disabled because of how hard they were playing defense.
I would say we did Iowa this weekend, and I would say in quals it was probably slightly less than Lake Superior, but I think every playoff match I watched, one robot was dedicated to defense, and they were doing either bump or ram you while you're shooting. So at least the strategy is percolating to playoffs. Quals maybe not as much.
I would say that, honestly, I talked to Bjorg, who was at our competition. They took off their intake, put the balls in the starting position around the robots so could keep them in their zone, and totally pivoted to defense. And that's how they got picked. They did a great job, honestly. And, to be able to say, we're not going to be the best shooter, but we can defend well, was actually a great strategy. They did a good job, and they made a great show for themselves, and got picked. We would have picked them, and I think showing yourself as being able to prevent two robots in the alliance zone from being able to get half of their balls into where they're going, if they got a shooter that has a 100 capacity and you prevent 50, that's a great strategy. It's actually really good. So that's what we saw at, teams pivot and decide, even if they're not just a square, I'm gonna be the defender and do that job. That's super smart. They did a good job.
I almost actually pulled up the match. The Team Bjorgs, they played against Alliance 1, and then they almost upset them. They lost by like 20 points. That was just a crazy match, because I think at one point there was like 3 bots that were all stuck on balls or the trench or whatnot. But they did play really good defense, and I think that's a really good comment. If you're a team that you have a swerve drivetrain, and you have a decent experienced driver, or even someone who's not experienced, if you're at your last 2 calls matches and you're sitting pretty low in rankings, just because you can't put up a lot of points, play defense. Commit your robot to playing defense. If you're okay with what the outcomes of defense and what happens to your robot, if you're okay with it, play defense and show that, hey, we can play defense. Or if you realize that you're not good at it, it gives you that opportunity to learn how to play some defense. And so you're ready for your next comp or next year, and you know that this is how to play good defense.
Yeah, their team and their driver committed, and let everybody know. That's like super smart. If you're going to do that, let everybody know and just do it. And they did. Super smart. I was very impressed.
I talked to technocrats on Saturday, and they took a vote on the bus Saturday morning, and they decided that they were going to take their intake off and only play defense the entire day Saturday. And they also got picked up for an alliance to play defense.
Let's see if we can hear. Down in Tennessee, we did our pit scouting, and it was kind of interesting talking about defense being in Minnesota. Half the team said that they wouldn't be willing to play defense if asked. Half of them said, no, we're not doing it.
Kirk, what regional was that again?
Smoky Mountain Regional.
Okay. I think it's really interesting. Honestly, I mean, so Inconceivable folks, I mean, you were obviously on the field, but I was sitting right next to it. I could probably count on two hands how many qualification matches didn't have defense being played. It seemed like it was just a standard part of the game of who's going to play defense this match. To hear about regionals where very few people are playing defense, and then looking at 10K yesterday where everybody was struggling to find a place to shoot or to get the balls they needed or across the trench, even through all of the calls matches. I think it's very interesting how the dynamic is different. What sounds like is different here compared to other regionals.
I would agree with that, and that it was pretty much every match and very different from Bluff Country early on. So is that a week 1 thing versus a week 4 thing, or is that less Minnesota teams? Who knows? But Briley, one thing that, unless I was on muted audio for a little bit, I haven't heard come up a lot, but I want to mention is, at one point, while we were Alliance, we were ranked 7. So at one point we were going to be an Alliance captain, and teams were coming over to us and saying, hey, what do you want to see in us? Right? What do you want for your pick? And a lot of them were, saying, hey, we would play defense. And my answer and some of our students' answer was, well, do you know the rules? I think that's a really, really important thing for defense spots to know the rules. Because that's where you get your penalty points that kill you at the end of a match, and you think you've won and you've lost, right? So I would ask those people when they came to me. Hopefully, they mostly came to the students, but on a couple occasions they came to me. Their knowledge of the rule book, their driver knowledge of the rule book, and then one of our other coaches had a point of does their driver seem teachable? Are their driving tactics not perfect, but do they seem like they're a good driver and teachable? Is the other thing that as a defense spot, some of those teams haven't played that you would tend to pick for a defense spot haven't played in playoffs. They may not have a highly experienced competition team, and they might not know themselves that those are important things. Inconceivable was in that position not that long ago, so we get it, that we're not like high and mighty on this. We didn't know what we didn't know. And so I think that's part of how we help each other grow, is like, this is what you should do if you want to be serious as a defense. This is what we're looking for. Here's what you should work on, like this is what we would want you to be able to do. That helps us all get a little bit better.
Yeah, I totally agree that sharing that is definitely big. And the coachable part is a huge part of it. If you're going on a run with the team in playoffs, you can see a lot of progression from that first, if you manage to squeak out your first couple wins, as they learn if they've never played defense before, defense is something you can kind of pick up as you go. And like you said, if they're coachable, that's a big thing. Also want to touch on Kirk. We don't really have pit scouts, but I will definitely be asking that question to almost every team. Will you be willing to play defense? Just because I'm curious to hear what the percentage is at Oklahoma, being so far away.
I'm curious speaking about penalties. So I believe I've now seen 3 or 4 yellow cards in the 2 regionals so we competed at Northern Lights, and then I was field reset at 10K and was right next to the field. And I think we've seen a penalty that I don't think we see very often, this idea of giving a team a yellow card for repeated aggressive hits on an intake. The idea that you're purposely trying to damage another robot, even if it is outside the frame perimeter. Maybe this is a fever dream and I'm hallucinating that I remembered this wrong, but are there people seeing this as well, that we have new yellow cards that we haven't seen in previous years with the kind of a robot looking like it's intentionally trying to basically tear the intake off of an opponent's robot.
I don't know if I can say if it's been like a new or if I've seen it. I do know that last year I was a team had brought up that they had an over the bumper intake to grab the coral, and someone had told them after a match or before a match or something along the lines of we're gonna go for your intake, or we went for your intake, and we're sorry about that. But that's kind of how we played. And with a lot of over the bumper this year, I could definitely see that. I know that when we played defense against semiconductors, they came to us afterwards and they were saying that their intake could like bend 180. I don't know how it worked, but they said that you guys like almost destroyed our intake if it wasn't able to do that. And we're like, it was not our goal to mess up your intake. We were just trying to play defense. So I could definitely see it being something that was accidentally done. But I can't say or can't talk on the yellow card aspect of it.
And maybe I'm just not catching it because it's over the PA. It's sort of hard to hear what they're describing, and so I may be misunderstanding what the announcers are saying of why the yellow card was issued. But I feel like, again, because I'm uncertain about this, which is why I asked. I feel like this is something new that I don't remember seeing in the past, where we're giving yellow cards for repeated hits, even if the hits, if it was only one of them, would be legal. But again, it's super hard to hear over the PA, and what I thought I heard may not be what is really happening. So it's the reason why I asked the question.
I do know that there was an update to the combat robotics rule, and maybe it's touching on one of those. I haven't actually read that rule change myself, but it could be part of that.
One of the things I'm noticing is a lot of those yellow cards, I think, are coming as a robot comes over the bump and goes into another robot. I've noticed quite a few yellow cards in that scenario.
Yeah, I will say that. Well, sorry, Briley. I will say that I'm a little frustrated by this game design and the yellow cards of over the bumps because, I mean, first is designed a field where your robot will have bumpers outside the bumper zone. If you use the bump at all, it's impossible for you not to have bumpers outside the bumper zone when your robot crosses the bump. And I feel like it's an unfortunate side effect. How about that? Maybe that's the best way to say this. It's an unfortunate side effect of the field that it's so easy to get a yellow card, and the field is basically forcing that situation upon you as an offensive bot coming across the field. And especially with that hub, right? The hub's really hard to see. A defensive bot can kind of sneak behind that hub to try to block off the ramp, the bump. And it's too late. You're already in the air. You've already got the momentum. There's no way to stop yourself from coming across that bump and having your bumpers above the other opponent's robot. So I find that frustrating part of the field. I'm sure it was not anticipated. That would maybe be something that will lesson learned for the future. But I think that's discouraging, that the way the field is designed intentionally puts your bumpers outside the bumper zone. And we have rules about bumpers being outside the bumper zone.
I think that this year, in all of my years, this is one of the ones where looking at the game design aspect of it, it's like the game designers made some mistakes here. Maybe not full mistakes, but like the fact that I can play defense and sit in the opposing line station, sit right on the bump, and if they can only go over the bump, they have to choose to hit me, get penalty points for being inside my frame perimeter, risk a yellow card from damage me inside our frame perimeter, or just not score, not go over the bump. Like being a bump only robot and playing against a defense robot is very, very scary. I think Sam could kind of attest to that it's very dangerous going over that bump because you have so many different things going against you. And that's I don't know how First is going to address that. I don't think they'll speak on it, but definitely as game design goes forward, I think that's something to look back on and go like, we need to, maybe there should have been a very small protection zone there that, a defense bot just can't sit right there and prevent people from coming over kind of.
Well, I think kind of the absurd part is, so you're just saying yellow card. I should really look at the difference, but in finals, if it's disabling damage, it's a red card. It's a loss. I mean, it can knock you out of a tournament, and you get these moments where it's like a robot's playing defense on the bump, so they've opted into playing battle bots or bumper bots, and if they're poorly constructed, they actually can draw red cards more. It's kind of the tripwire robot scenario, and there was a red card issued in our favor in Iowa in finals 1. Neutrino goes over the bumper, or goes over the bump. Their swerve module goes into the bot. Wheels are spinning, grabs some wires and rips them. It beat up a bunch of other mechanisms too. And it's kind of like, the rules is written, that's a red card. And it's like, I wish this was a replay. I wish there was something else. Maybe it should be nothing. I'm not sure. Do we have to construct our robots so that swerve modules can spin inside of them and it's okay? I think ours could probably handle it, but I don't know. It's kind of a tall order. I'm not sure what to do about it, I guess, but the red card's a bad feel. Bad feel.
Especially in playoffs. Nobody wants to win or lose a match that way, right? I mean, nobody wants to be, I mean, even if it's a situation where there was not even any contact, nobody wants to win or lose a match because an opponent's robot maybe ran into the wall and broke something and now they're down, right? You want to win or lose because you both played your best match and things worked out. I don't know. I find the defensive situation frustrating from a penalty point of view this year because the game has basically encouraged all of us to have stuff outside of our robot for most of the match. I find that frustrating. I literally sat 10 foot from the field all day this weekend, and in my opinion, I saw too many penalties being called on offensive robots who were trying to score because defense robots were running into them, lifting up their intake and getting it over the bumper. And then the offensive robot made contact inside the frame perimeter of a defensive robot. I'm going to say something I think is probably going to be an unpopular opinion, but I think if you're playing defense, and when I say playing defense, I mean you're not attempting to pick up balls or score balls. Your purpose there is to hit another robot. I don't think you should be able to gain points. So that's basically no penalties, right? There was a rule, and I don't know if that's still in the rule book. I should have gone back and looked before this call, but last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, there was a lot of talk about, well, who initiated contact? And my comment was, look, if you're playing defense, your whole purpose is to initiate contact. Defensive robots always initiate contact. And I feel strongly that should be in the rules. That might be a very unpopular opinion amongst folks. And I know that the pushback I immediately got on that was, well, that's a judgment call of if you're playing defense or not. I'm like, well, it's a judgment call of who initiates contact. I mean, everything about being a ref is, well, not everything. A lot of things about being a ref is making a judgment call. And it's their job to do that. And, by and large, the refs do a really good job. And they try really hard to make the right call. Especially when there's a yellow card, there's a ton of deliberation. There's a ton of talking. They do everything they can do to make that right call. I think the judgment call and the deliberation is just part of being a ref. I think it's easier to decide what robot's playing defense than it is to decide who's initiating contact. So anyway, like I said, that might be an unpopular opinion, but I would really like to see that change in the rules where if your goal as a robot is to play defense and hit another robot, I don't think you should be able to earn points from that, honestly. But that's just my 2 cents.
I have one more thing. We're kind of on this topic right now to kind of discuss on defense is the penalty side of it. I have 4 written down that I've seen, and I don't know if I've hardly seen much penalties out of it. There's a contact with the ladder during endgame. There's 2 bots colluding to shut down major game elements. That one doesn't happen a lot. I have seen it a couple times. Pin counts, going over a pin count, or contact inside a frame perimeter. Outside of that, I don't know if I've seen much for other penalties. I have seen chaotic shot balls from outside the alliance zone into their own hub once on accident. Otherwise, I haven't seen much for other penalty points going up on the board. I don't know if anyone else has seen anything. Maybe it was just a one-time case or something that happened a lot because of one robot or something.
I saw a really interesting penalty that I had not seen before. In fact, I think I might have seen it twice. It might have been Fire Bears and maybe Inconceivable. We got some folks on the call here, but during their auto, they got hung up when they turned the corner, and when they came back, they were literally this far from being across the Alliance Zone line, and they shot all their balls from the correct side of the trench bar, but because they had not gone back into the Alliance Zone, they made all their balls from the trench without crossing back over the line, and literally it was by this much. And they made it every single ball they shot, but every single ball they shot was an illegal shot because they weren't back in their Alliance Zone. And if it wasn't inconceivable with somebody else, they shot from the other side of the trench and still made a ton of their balls. But their auto also kind of got hung up, and they ended up shooting from basically the middle zone. So that was interesting. I saw that twice yesterday, sitting in the corner where I was sitting for field reset. That was a new penalty for me to see that happen.
I can verify that we received a major penalty for that infraction on auto, unfortunately. Yes. The other thing I will say about 10K penalties was the refs were like, our scouters actually sent us messages over Discord with photos of two refs who were like, these two refs are particularly aggressive in calling pin counts. Be careful. And I will say that having watched those two refs, I will agree. It almost seemed like pin counts were down to 2 on a lot of cases.
Yeah, I don't think that that's too unusual. I think in a lot of years, you see reps that have the penalties that they look for more than the other penalties, maybe. And I think you have maybe people that are new to refereeing who are more hesitant to wave that flag. So I'm not going to say too many bad things about the ref. I think it's less about the refs and more about the rules. I'd really like to see some refinement of the rules to especially around defense, because I think First has done a lot of things this year to limit robot damage, with the field layout, with the reduced weight, with the reduced frame perimeter. I think First has done a lot of things to reduce robot damage. I think there's some things that we can do around the rules on playing defense that could further, like if you play, I'm going to say it again. If you play defense, you do it at your own risk. I don't think you should be able to earn points by playing defense. Again, my 2 cents. All right, Briley, we're getting close on time. Is there any final things that you want to comments you want to wrap up, or questions that you've been holding to the end that you want to ask?
I don't have anything else. Just kind of wrap up the topic of defense. We kind of covered, the different types of defense to playing, things to look for when you're playing defense. Then we kind of wrapped up with this whole penalty side of it. If you're a really good high-scoring bot, kind of what Scott talked about, maybe you want to show off that you can play defense during a quals match, or as you're kind of wrapping up if you already know your position. If you're a bot that's struggling to score, you're getting into some really tough matchups. If you think your bot can handle it, show that you can play some defense or learn how to play some defense, because especially in this game, defense is huge. Those top alliances are going to be looking, their second pick is probably going to be a defense bot. And if you can show that you can do it, that's another way to help you get into playoffs, get some points, get some experience, and make your first experience more memorable.
All right. Well, big, huge round of applause to Briley. I told Briley this when he joined the call, but Briley saved my bacon. We were supposed to have a different topic tonight. We had to move that topic out, and I was really worried. I was like, man, what am I going to do about this? I've got 3 days to come up with a brand new topic. And within hours, Briley had signed up to take this slot. So huge applause. Thank you so much for doing that. And it's so great to have a student leading the conversation. We've had so many adult-led conversations the last couple of weeks, mostly me. It's so nice to have a student back on the call. So double kudos to Briley for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. There will not be a call next week because it's Easter holiday, and a lot of folks won't be available for that. We're coming back with a discussion about Champs travel and Champs logistics and anything else for teams that either have qualified or might qualify, or just want to talk about what they should prepare for coming years, especially maybe around finances. If your team has a goal or a hope to be able to attend Champs in the future, things are getting harder than ever to be able to afford Champs. And so tune in for that there. Also, I put out a plea for folks to give roundtable topics, especially get to know my team type of topics. I think we're down to maybe 2 open slots between now and the end of the year. So if you or your team were considering giving a talk or doing a get to know our team roundtable, don't wait, because there's not many spots left. So please go sign up for those spots now. You can either find a link in the email that I send out every week if you're on the mailing list, or you can go to team2052.com/roundtable, all lowercase, and find the link to sign up to host a topic there. So, all right. Once again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, especially to Briley. And I hope to see everyone in 2 weeks, because we will not be meeting next week. Have a great night, everyone.
That's it for this week's FRC Roundtable. Join us live all season long, every Sunday night. Visit the website at team2052.com/roundtable to sign up for weekly invites. In the meantime, keep building, keep learning, and we'll see you next week.